Well, thank you again, everyone, for being with us today, and it is a delight to hear everyone coming back on the bridge after all that has transpired here in the last couple of weeks. And I know from some of the pictures that are being put up on Facebook that some of the areas down by Wilmington are still underwater along the Northeast Cape Fear. There's still houses submerged up there. So the media has come and gone, and the wind dancers have moved on to other places, but the flooding continues. So our heart is with each and every one. And we know that these are opportunities for new beginnings, new beginnings. Even though we can look at the devastation and the destruction, and we can look at all of the work, the mess of cleaning out, we try to frame it in a positive way. This is an opportunity for a new beginning. So I'd like you today, if you will humor me, and if you can't stop and write down right now, you can play this back later. It'll be on YouTube. But the title of today's talk is Fill in the Blank. Fill in the blank. So I invite you, I'm going to ask a couple questions, and I invite you to fill in the blank with whichever answer is appropriate for you, and you don't have to share these answers with anyone. The purpose of the exercise is just to start thinking. All right, so question number one. The thing that gives me the most satisfaction is. The thing that gives me the most satisfaction is. And I want you to finish that sentence. The thing that gives me the most satisfaction is. That's answer number one. Answer number two. That which I wish to have happen now is. That which I wish to have happen now is. That which I wish to have happen now is. That's answer number two. And question number three. The good I am seeking is. The good I am seeking is. The good I am seeking is. Three things. Maybe the same three things, maybe three different things, maybe a mix and match. But I invite you to hold on to your answers. For the rest of the week at least, I invite you to hold on to those answers and to think about them and to bring them to mind. Emmett Fox is one of my favorite teachers in the New Thought movement. And I've mentioned this before. Emmett Fox was a student of Thomas Troward, and Thomas Troward was a British judge. He was a judge over civil court in India when India was a British colony. And he started writing and teaching what in England was called higher thought at the time, and he didn't know that. So he went off to India, and he had been raised Church of England, and he was devout. And he went off to India, and he started to get exposed to the ideas of the West. And he started to see that, if you strip away, as Campbell would say, Joseph Campbell, you strip away the costumes and the color of the local atmosphere, you start to see that there's some fundamental ideas. I think Joseph Campbell referred to a German philosopher when he said primordial ideas. These ideas are there. They exist in different cultures throughout the world. We were discussing this Wednesday night on our group. In one of the Native American tribes, their creation myth. Every culture has a creation myth. Every culture has a myth about where food comes from. Every culture has a myth about where fire comes from, and every culture has a myth about a flood. And by myth, I don't mean a fabricated story, a tall tale kind of thing. By a myth, I mean a folk tale, a traditional tale that contains the important values of a culture. So the myths define the culture. The things that are important to the culture are contained in the myths. And as Joseph Campbell again tells us, a ritual is a reenactment of the myth. And the ritual, for those who believe the myth, the ritual requires no explanation. So as soon as we observe, for example, a dance of native peoples, rain dance or things like that, and we try to explain it, we're from the outside, we're looking in. So in this Native American tribe, their mythology of the creation is that the universe is built on the back of a turtle. And that same idea exists in India, that the universe exists on the back of a turtle. Now, how is it that these two cultures so far apart, removed in time, removed in physical space, but they have the same idea? And then then we have to say, well, what is the significance of the turtle? Why would these people even think that? What is it that made them think that? Is it really a turtle, or is it a symbol for something deeper? So we go off a little bit. We start to think there are certain common ideas. And Troward went to India and he saw these ideas, and he came back to England and he started to write about them. He went into a tea house in England, and in America we're kind of used to, you go in a restaurant, if you're alone, even if the table seats 4, they sit you at a table and nobody else sits there until you're done. But in other cultures, it's not so. They might sit you at a table for 4, and then 3 other people might come and join you. And this lady came and joined Troward, and she was looking down and reading upside down what he was writing. And she told him, she says, "I can't help but notice that you are a student of higher thought." And Troward said, "What is that? What is that?" He didn't know that anybody else believed the same way he did. But anyway, Troward went on to become a popular lecturer and teacher in England, but in his mannerisms, in his training as a judge, he tried to present everything as a logical argument. You had your major premise, you had your minor premises, you had your conclusions, and most of his books were transcribed from lectures that he gave. People sit there and take shorthand. Very difficult to understand what he's written because of that. It's somebody went in and tried to figure out the punctuation as he was speaking. So anyway, Emmett Fox came along. Emmett Fox was basically Troward's front man. He would go out and rent the hall and put the notices in the paper and sell the tickets and all those kind of things to get people in to hear his lectures. And Emmett Fox said that he wanted to take what Troward was teaching and he wanted to make it more accessible to people. And that's what I love about him. He had a bit of a sense of humor. You can kind of imagine him telling his stories with a little glint in his eye and a chuckle. And sometimes the chuckle would be towards himself. So the one story that he told that is applicable to today, fill in the blank, is he came to New York City, and I guess he was born in Ireland, grew up in Ireland, lived in England, came to New York City, and he was just making his way around New York, trying to figure out where things were. So he was hungry, and he wanted to find a restaurant and get some supper. Excuse me. And he was walking down the street, and he looked through the windows of this restaurant, and he looked in, and there were people, sitting at tables, and they had all kinds of very delicious looking food sitting in front of them. And he thought, well, I'll give this place a try. So he went in, and he went over and he found an empty table, and he sat down at the table, and he's looking around and he's watching whatever, how you do that? You go in a restaurant, you say, what is everybody else eating? What looks good here, And oh, I think I'll have that, or I think I'll have that. So he was trying to, without even having seen a menu, he was trying to think about what it was that he was going to have. And he was sitting, and he was sitting, and he was sitting, and he was waiting for a server to come and hand him a menu and ask him what he wanted. And the server never came. And he couldn't understand that. You know, everybody around him had all this food. They were talking, they were eating, they were having a good time. And he was sitting there all by himself, and nobody was paying any attention to him. So finally he went over to somebody at another table, and he said, excuse me, he says, what do you have to do to get food around here? You know, I've been sitting here for all this time. Nobody's come over to take my order. And the person he talked to said, well, sir, this is a cafeteria. This is self-service. What you have to do is you have to go, and they pointed to the beginning of the line, and they said, you know, go down there and get a tray, and then you go down the food line, and you tell the people there what you want, and they'll put it on a plate for you, and then you pay for it, and then you come and sit down and eat. So he had never seen that before. Apparently, according to the way he tells the story, you know, they didn't have those things in England. And the irony of the moment was not lost on him. You know, here he was sitting in a restaurant where he could have virtually anything he wanted. You know, as long as it was on the menu, as long as they had it at the steam table, he could have whatever he wanted. But he was waiting for somebody else to serve him. And what was required was that he had to make a decision. He had to get up. He had to go get the tray. He had to go down the line. He had to look at the choices that were available. You know, you've all been in a cafeteria. You've seen how they're laid out. You know, you go here and they've got the meats and the fish and fowl, and you go here and they've got the vegetables, and you go there and they've got desserts, and you know, at the end of the line they've got the beverages, and then you pay. So he had to go through and he had to choose. Now, once he understood how it worked, once he understood how the system was set up, well, then it was easy. You see, then it was a delight. Well, then he could go and he could say, well, I'll have the pot roast. And maybe he would go back another day and say, well, I have the pot pie. And maybe he would go back one day, you know, and have mashed potatoes. And another day he would have egg noodles. So he had to understand how the system worked. And the system required him to take action, required him to make a decision. But then he had to actually do it. He had to actually go get the tray and go through the line. Okay? And of course, the analogy is clear if we convert that over to the spiritual sense. We live in a universe that responds to us according to our belief. But how much time do we spend deciding what we will believe, or even just becoming aware of what it is that we believe? You know? We have in our lifetimes, we have seen the advance of computers. You know, from an obscure machine that was run on vacuum tubes and punch cards and tapes, for all the way to now you carry one around and it makes phone calls for you. And we understand that, you know, that as a programmer, or when writing a computer program, you can decide how a particular task will be handled, and then you can program that into a computer. And then from then on, that computer will do it that way. That the computer doesn't make any judgment that this is the right way or the wrong way. It just follows instructions. It is programmed to do something, so it does it, you know. And as we used to say when we were working in programming, garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you write the program wrong, you're going to get incorrect results at the end. If you give the wrong input, you're going to get incorrect results at the end. But there's an advantage to that. You can see the great advantage to that. You know, I was telling one of our grandsons this. He's in high school now, and he's starting to take some of the higher mathematics classes. And you know, I tried to tell him we didn't have calculators in high school. They were brand new in high school when I was in high school. I remember big billboards in New York City advertising the first commercial calculators for sale. and they were like $400 and something in 1963, which these days would be between $3,000 and $4,000 if you converted the dollars over. But engineering students had slide rules, and some of the slide rules were like 1.5 feet, 2 feet long, and they wore them on a belt. It looked like a sword. You'd see them walking around the college campuses, and it looked like they had a sword, and that was a slide rule that they would use to figure out the mathematics. But today, we have calculators. Our children go to school and have calculators, and the tasks that you and I learned in school, in mathematics, in using logarithms and doing everything by hand and all of these things, is really not necessary for the kids to learn that anymore, because they have a tool that they can just simply punch in a few numbers and they will get the result that they're looking for. So there's a certain value in things becoming automated. There's a certain value in that, because you do it once, you figure out the right way to do it for you, the best way to do it for you, and then from then on you kind of do it automatically. And that's kind of the way that our minds are set up. I don't know if mind is the right word, but it's just kind of the way that we are set up, If you look at what's going on, if you observe what's going on around you and then within you, a lot of what happens is our attention seems to be focused on what could go wrong. What could go wrong? And you can understand from an evolutionary point of view, right? The purpose of evolution was just to keep humanity alive, to keep us alive long enough for us to awaken to our spiritual truth, to our spiritual self. So if you think of evolution from that standpoint, that what evolution wants is for the organism to stay alive, then quickly identifying anything that comes up as a threat or not was very important. You can imagine we're all out walking down the trail one day through the forest, and all of a sudden this creature appears on the trail. And the first thing we have to know, is it friend or foe? Fight or flight? Do we prepare to do battle with it? Do we run away from it? What is it? So if it's an animal that can do us harm, we take appropriate action. If it's our pet dog that's following us down the trail, we behave differently. But you can understand from a point of view of evolution that examining everything quickly to determine if it is a threat, that was very important. But now we have stepped into what Troward calls the fifth kingdom, the spiritual kingdom. Now we are starting to get into the realm of recognizing ourselves as spiritual beings, living in a spiritual universe that in fact does respond to us according to our belief. So what is required then is we have to make a shift, right? New thought says if you want a new experience, you have to have a new thought. Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We want a different result in our life. We want something to change. We have to change our thoughts. We have to change our thinking. Most importantly, we have to change our beliefs. So like Emmett Fox, we're sitting here in this metaphysical cafeteria. We're sitting here in this universe where we can basically choose to experience whatever it is that we wish. But instead of thinking about what we want, we're thinking about everything else under the sun. Just think for a moment. You have 24 hours in a day. You're awake for, let's say, 16 of those. Out of those 16 hours that you're awake, how much time do you spend thinking about what you're thinking about? How much time do you spend truly aware of what's transpiring up here in your field of consciousness? I mean, it's coming, it's going, it's coming, it's going, it's constantly there. But are we really consciously aware of it? So what has happened to us? What has happened to humanity? Buddhism talks about conditioned mind. There's a point where there's just awareness, pure awareness. There's an animal on the trail in front of us, pure awareness. And then immediately, conditions start to arise. We start to think, well, is it a friendly animal or is it an unfriendly animal? Do I recognize this one? Do I not recognize this one? How is it behaving? Is it making a threatening motion? Or is it, is it wagging its tail as if it's friendly? Is it baring its teeth and growling at me? What is going on? So immediately we have this perception, this awareness. It is. There's an animal there. And then our mind kicks in, or our thoughts kick in, or we start searching our files to see, does this look like something that I've ever seen before? So everything else that starts to arise then is conditioned. Everything else that starts to arise is conditioned, and it's conditioned on past experience. And I think we have to realize that two different people from two different backgrounds on that same trail can have two entirely different experiences. Because what they're experiencing is not what they're seeing. What they're experiencing is a result of their conditioned thoughts, their conditioned mind. And so the example that is used in India, people would bathe in the rivers. So they would just go down to the river and they would wade out into the water a little bit, and they would stand there and they would wash themselves. And this man goes down to the river one day and he goes to wade into the water, and he takes a step out and he steps on a big snake. Big round snake, maybe 2 inches in diameter. And he puts his foot down and it's slimy and it slithers and it rolls, and he comes running out of the water, screaming hysterically. He stepped on a snake. It's going to bite him. It's going to kill him. He's going to swell up. He's going to die. But then he goes and he looks in the water, and it's not a snake. It's an old piece of rope that fell off a boat that was passing by. And it's just laying there. So the rope is. The thought that it was a snake and the reactions to the idea that it was a snake, that was conditioning. And it's good conditioning in the fact that it keeps us alive. It keeps us alive. None of us wants to stand there and say, oh, I just stepped on something. Perhaps it is a snake. Perhaps it is a piece of rope. How will I know? Yeah. Instinct says, get out of there. Treat it as if it's a danger. Get out of there. Go examine it later when it's safe. And again, from the point of view of evolution, that's good. It keeps us alive. But if it carries over too much into our day, my point is, if we are spending the majority of our days simply acting and reacting out of conditioned mind, out of the way that things have been programmed, we're not going to grow. We're not going to change. Everything is going to look pretty much the same, as it always has looked. So as Emmett Fox pointed out in his little parable, you and I have to choose. We have to choose. No one else is going to do it for us. No one else can do it for us. This is a very important point, because I hear people say from time to time, well, God knows better than I do, and God will choose the right thing for me. Get that out of your head. That ain't going to happen. That ain't going to happen. You're going to get something, but what you're going to get is based on the way that your conditioned mind works. Your conditioned mind above the conscious level and your conditioned mind below the conscious level. You're going to get back what you believe, even if you're not aware of what you're believing. And you're going to get it, and you're going to say, oh, that looks familiar. You see, God chose for me something that I would recognize. No, it doesn't happen that way. The divine mind cannot do for you what it has created you to do for yourself. The divine mind cannot do for you what it has created you to do for yourself. You must choose. You must become a conscious chooser if you are not already. You must become aware of the noise that's taking place inside your head, if that's where it really is taking place. But you have to become aware of the noise that's projecting itself onto the screen of your consciousness. And you have to decide. Yep. I will associate with that thought. Nope. I will let that one go. I will let that one go by. So Emma Curtis Hopkins, who's another of my favorite teachers, she starts off one of her books, and she says, "What is the good? What is the good that you are seeking?" And a very powerful question. She goes on to tell us that everything in the universe, everyone and everything in the universe, all parts of creation, if we stop and consider them, everything is motivated by what it considers its good. When we live down at the beach there, and for the folks who still live down that way, if you get up early in the morning and you go down to the beach, particularly if you go down like Fort Fisher, because there's this big island in the Cape Fear River called Bird Island. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of seabirds that make their nests there. And if you go down to the beach at Fort Fisher early in the morning, just before the sunrise, you can see thousands and thousands and thousands of birds as they leave their nest over in the Cape Fear, and they start flying out to sea. Why do they do that? What motivates them to do that? Well, they're seeking their good. Their food is out there. There's something within them that knows that their good is out there. And they are motivated because they are seeking their good. By instinct, they are motivated. If you go back down to the beach around sunset, you'll see just the opposite. You'll see thousands and thousands and thousands of seabirds returning from the sea, returning to their nests on Bird Island. Why do they do that? They're seeking their good. They're seeking their refuge, their safe place to rest. Perhaps they're bringing food back to the nest to feed their young. But there's something within them that is motivating them to seek their good. Everyone and everything. This, by the way, also helps us to become more accepting of others. When we recognize that everyone and everything is doing what and behaving in a manner that they think will bring them their good. It's just that they may have a different idea of what good is than you do. But everyone and everything is motivated. They're seeking their good. And you and I are as well. But unless and until we become consciously aware of what the good is that we are seeking, we are being motivated at an unconscious level. I'll call it that. Subliminal might be a better term. We are aware of it, but we are not aware that we are aware of it. If that makes any sense. Because our subconscious mind is not unconscious. We are just not aware of what it is aware of. I mean, think about that, We are conscious beings, but there is a part of us that's conscious and the other part of it isn't aware of what that part is conscious of. We talk about this every once in a while. Wednesday, where do our thoughts go? Where do they come from? You used to know something and now you can't remember it, and then 20 minutes later it's there again. Where was it? Where did it go? It's like part of us is hidden from ourselves. And if we are not consciously declaring what the good is that we are seeking in our lives, then whatever the jumble, the sum total of the jumble of our conditioned mind that will decide for us. That will decide for us. It is done unto you according to your belief. Doesn't say that you are done unto you according to your conscious belief. It just says according to your belief. Now the other part of that is when we talk about conditioned mind, you see, immediately if we say, well, you can have whatever you want, just fill in the blank, you can have whatever you want. See, then all the buts start to come up. All the objections start to come up. All of the reasons why not. See, remember what I said in the beginning. If you look at what's going on around us, if you look at what's going on inside of us, most of the time, people are trying to figure out what's wrong with something. Not what's right with it, what's wrong with it. I grew up in New York City and rode the subway into the city every day for many years. You know, and people would be reading the newspaper, people would be engaged in conversation, and most of the time, what you were reading or what you were hearing is about what was wrong with something. The mayor wanted to do this, and here's what's wrong with that. You know, the Yankees wanted to trade this player. Here's what's wrong with that, and people would go on and on and on, and it was. And Osho talks about this a little bit. It's pretty easy to be negative and say, you know, what's wrong with stuff. You don't really have to you don't really have to prove much, right? You just say, well, that's absurd, that's wrong, that's terrible, and everybody thinks, well, you must know something. You don't know anything. You're just saying, well, it's wrong. But most of the time, what's going on in our mind, we're thinking about what's wrong. And now we have to train ourselves to think about what's right. Because what the years of conditioning, the generations of conditioning, the eons of conditioning, is we've been trained to look for what's wrong. And now we have to become aware of what's good. What's good? What is the name of your good? What is the good that you are seeking? So Emma Curtis Hopkins tells us, take that as a starting place. Napoleon Hill says, desire is the starting point of all achievement. What is the good that you desire? What is the good that you desire? And if the buts start to come up and say, but you can't have that, but you can't have that, see? But you shouldn't have that, it's a very simple test. Ernest Holmes gives us a very simple test. There's this thing that you desire, this good that you have named, this good that you have just named, right? At the beginning I said fill in the blank. The good that I am seeking is. Now whatever that good is, does that good bring into this world, through you, as you, a greater expression of life, or love, or truth, or beauty? What is it that's trying to express through this good that you are seeking? And if this good that you are seeking, if you can see how it brings into the world a greater expression of life or love or truth or beauty, then you say to yourself, does it try to harm anyone in any way? Does it try to rob anyone of anything in any way? And if this good that you are seeking brings a greater expression of life or love or truth or beauty and does no harm to another and does not rob from another, then what could possibly be against it? What could possibly be against it? So I'll just give you one example to kind of work through and how conditioned mind kind of talks to us. You know, so many times we would say the good that we are seeking is health. Right? We all wish to be healthy. Everyone wishes to be healthy. You know, your dog wishes to be healthy. Your cat wishes to be healthy. Maybe cannot consciously articulate that, but desiring health is a normal state of being. And really what are you seeking with health? You know, as a practitioner, I would ask people, and what would having good health allow you to experience? Trying to get past the symbol. And usually it comes down to freedom. Well, you know, if I'm healthy, I can do the things that I want to do. I can be free to do the things that I want to do. Very important, right? I want wealth. I want money. I want enough and plenty. I want to never have to worry about paying my bills again. I want to be able to go do the things that I want to do. I want to be able to give to give to the charities that I wish to support. I want to be able to buy nice things for my family as gifts. Freedom, financial freedom. So a lot of times what we're looking for is freedom. So now we come to this idea then, well, what in the universe, what in God's creation, what in God would wish you not to have perfect health? What is the divine wish for your health, if there is such a thing? What is the divine wish for your health? And this is where the old beliefs, the old ideas start coming in. Remember, in the New Testament it says, pray believing in your hearts that it is so, and it shall be so. There's no caveat in there. There's no caveat that in there that says, well, unless God decides that you shouldn't have it. Okay? Unless there's a higher plan, unless you need to be punished, unless you need to learn a lesson, then you won't get it. But all of these things exist in our culture. You see, all of these things exist in what we would call race consciousness, or Carl Jung might call collective consciousness. So we start to think about, well, the good that I'm seeking is health. And then what might happen is immediately all of these buts, all of the old ways of thinking, all of the old negative ideas start to come up. But maybe God wants you to be sick. Maybe God is punishing you for something and you ought to be sick. Or maybe you need to learn a lesson and this sickness was brought to you or given to you as a blessing so that you could learn a lesson. And you have to stop right there and say, no, that's conditioned mind. That's human beings trying to explain the circumstances, trying to explain the sickness. But divine love has created me out of itself, and it can only wish for me what it wishes for itself, and it could never wish sickness on me. Or if it could wish sickness upon itself. And it can't do that. It can't act in a manner that is not consistent with its own nature. So this is what I'm talking about. We have to understand that we are required to state the good, and then watch the reaction, watch what comes up, and say no, I do not associate with that idea. Reverend Joan and Reverend James in Durham used to give us a great visual of cancel and replace. Imagine that you're standing at a whiteboard. It used to be blackboards. I think I told you that. I went to college, take a few courses a few years ago, and one of the kids says to me, God, when you were in school, they had actual blackboards, didn't they? And I had to laugh because now they're whiteboards. But you're standing at this whiteboard, and you've got a pen and pencil in your hand, and you're writing down these ideas, and all of a sudden you write down one that you don't like. I am not worthy. Cancel and replace. Take that eraser, erase that idea off the whiteboard, and put in a new one. Put in a new one. You have the ability to do that, but you also have the responsibility to do that, and you have the accountability to do that. So let's talk about those things very quickly. The ability means I can do it. So maybe there's something that needs to be done, and there's 15, 20 different people around you who can do it. Let's make it something simple, like mowing the grass. The grass needs to be mown. Anybody who can start the lawnmower and push it, well, they can mow the grass. So a lot of people have the ability to do it. But it's not their job. They've got other things to do. But one person has been assigned the responsibility to do it. This is the person whose job it is to do that. See? That is their job. And then there is accountability. And accountability means the one who gets to experience the consequences of doing or not doing the task. So let's say it's my house, and I live in the house. And I have the ability to mow the grass, but all the kids in the neighborhood have the ability to mow the grass too. So this one kid knocks on the door and says, Jim, do you want your grass mown? I'll cut it for $20. And I say, sure. And I give him the $20. So now he's responsible. Now I've made him responsible. I've given him $20. He's supposed to cut my grass. But I'm still accountable. If he doesn't cut the grass, or if he does cut the grass, it's my grass. I'm the one who gets to experience the consequences of either having the grass cut or not having the grass cut. So in your life, when it comes to choosing, right, when it comes to naming your good, when it comes to deciding the good that you shall have, what is it that fulfills you? What do you want to have happen now? What is the good that you are seeking? You have the ability to decide. You are the one responsible to decide, because no one else can decide for you. God is not going to decide for you. I can't decide for you. Your spouse, your teachers, your parents, no one can decide for you. Even if you defer to their decision, you have made a decision to defer. You have made a decision to accept what they have told you. And again, it may not be a conscious decision. You may not have stopped and said, oh, well, is that a snake or is that a rope? You may not have paused long enough to say, well, that's their opinion and I can choose to accept it or not. You may have just said, oh, well, my dad told me I should do this, so I need to go do it. But you are the one ultimately accountable. You are the one who is going to experience the consequences of choosing or not choosing, of deciding or of not deciding, or of deferring. We are all in that cafeteria with Emmett Fox. We are all sitting there in that cafeteria with Emmett Fox. We have been given a blank check. We have been given the ability, the responsibility, and the accountability to decide for ourselves what we will experience in life, how we will live our life, how will we give our gifts to this world, if that's the way that we choose to live our life. But if we don't do the one thing that only we can do, which is to become aware of what we are thinking and to choose, we've given it away. We've taken our blank check and we've given it to other people and said, here, write in it whatever you want, and whatever comes along, I'll just accept that and think that well, God must have decided to give that to me. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You have the ability, you have the responsibility, and you have the accountability to decide what good you will experience in your life. We all have 24 hours in a day. We're typically awake about 16 of those. Now what we have to do is condition ourselves to become more aware during those 16 hours, more aware of what we are consciously choosing to experience in our lives. Not put ourselves on autopilot, not go do all the tasks that are in front of us and just get through the day. But while we are engaged in all of the things that we have to do during the day, remind ourselves, the good that I am seeking is. The good that I am seeking is. Right? That which fulfills me is. That which I wish to have happen is. So, we went through a period where everybody had a wristwatch, then we went through a period where nobody had a wristwatch, and now everybody's getting a wristwatch back again, and it tells you how far you've walked and everything else. But there's little timers in there, and you can set that little timer to beep at you every 15 minutes to remind you. And when that timer goes off, you can set it on your computer, you can set it on your phone. Set that timer for every 15 minutes, and when that timer goes off, you say to yourself, the good that I am seeking is. That which fulfills me is. What I want to have happen now is. So what you're doing is you're reminding yourself all day long, I am a conscious chooser. I am the only thinker in my universe. I am a conscious chooser. The universe responds to me according to my belief, and I am now deliberately becoming aware of what I believe, right? So when I say the good that I'm seeking is health, and something else pops up and says, oh, but the genes in your family, stop, cancel, replace, wipe that off the board, write something new, right? Principle is never bound by precedent. God is all there is. So I invite you this week, not just for this hour that we spend together on a Sunday morning, but I invite you this week to seriously consider this as part of your spiritual practice. Get a couple of index cards. I love the 3x5 index cards. Get a couple of index cards. Put it on your phone. Put it on your iPad. Do whatever you got to do. But answer those 3 questions. Answer those 3 questions. That which fulfills me or satisfies me, whichever way you want to say it, is. The good that I am seeking is. That which I wish to have happen now is. See, most people, if you ask them what they want to have happen, they probably can't tell you. They can tell you everything that's wrong and everything that they, I love that when we would do this in business. We would say to people, well, what do you think the future is here? What do you think the ideal for this department is? What do you see this department becoming? They couldn't tell us. But they would tell us everything that was wrong with it. Everything that was wrong. And sometimes we would have to work with them for weeks and say, okay, now take this thing that's wrong. If you turn it around, what does it look like when it's right? Take this other thing that's wrong. What does it look like when it's right? And we would step by step by step have to take them from the point of knowing everything that was wrong to creating a clear picture of the good that they were seeking. So it's like anything else. How much time are we going to put into it? Are we actually going to practice it? It's very simple. It's not hard. You don't need a lot of special equipment to do it. But you just need to decide that you're going to do it and do it. What is the good that you are seeking? How often do you think about it? When objections come up in the conditioned mind that tell you all the reasons you can't have it, are you shooting them down? Maybe you've seen the videos of people shooting skeet, the clay pigeons. Does the idea come up somewhere in the back of your mind? It says, pull! And this idea comes up and it's floating across and it says, you can't have that. Knock it out of the sky. Take your eraser, erase it, wipe it off the whiteboard, write something in its place. You're the only conscious chooser in your life. And you must fill in the blank. And so it is.